Okay, so I've talked a lot recently about the PS2 era of Tekken. As much as I love both Tekken 4 and Tekken 5, Tekken Tag Tournament is probably my favorite Tekken game of all time, and a bridge between two different periods of the series. The arcade version of Tekken Tag Tournament dropped in 1999. Man, I can still remember the feeling when I stepped into an arcade expecting to see dueling Tekken 3 arcade machines and instead seeing a Tekken Tag 1 placed in the center between them. A method my local arcade used 2 years earlier with Tekken 2 and Tekken 3, by the way. Tekken Tag felt like an all-star game. That roster had every single character in the series minus Gon at the time in the franchise, and it was insane. Some of the missing Tekken 2 characters were my main only complaint with Tekken 3 at the time. Tag 1 was basically Tekken 3 with Tekken 2's roster added in a nutshell. Baek, Jun, Armor King, Bruce, Michelle, Kazuya, they're all back, and they fit like a glove with Tekken 3's roster. Honestly, I love Tekken 2, but boy did that gameplay not age well over time. Tekken 3's gameplay was far superior to Tekken 2's, and it didn't have that floaty, muddy nature that Tekken 2 had. In hindsight, of course. It was okay for its time, but by 1999, even Tekken 2 started to feel like it was dated already. But Tekken Tag 1 felt so crisp, and it's kinda hard for me to explain why. Tekken Tag 1 and Tekken 3 both felt the same, but just slightly different. Tekken Tag 1, for whatever reason, just felt a little smoother and a little faster. The juggling is still there, but it doesn't feel as floaty and ridiculous as Tekken 1 and 2, but it just felt slightly more snappier than Tekken 3, at least in my opinion. There could actually be no difference between how Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag Tournament 1 played, but I don't know why to me it just felt like it was different. And it may just be because of added tag mechanics and just being able to tag in and out in the middle of juggle combos, or being able to pull together like specific team combinations depending upon what two characters you played with, but I just like how Tekken Tag 1 felt a lot more in comparison to 3. Considering nothing really changed as far as like inputs or anything are concerned. Like it just felt really nice to have Tekken 2 characters with much better gameplay. My literal only complaint with Tekken Tag Tournament 1 in terms of actually playing the game that I have personally is that the game was one and done. After you beat one member of the other team, the round was over. Selfishly on my part, I never liked this because I wanted the games and fights to last as long as humanly possible, so eliminating both people would have been fine for me. Yes, it was that fun to where you wanted the rounds to last longer. Then there was the look of the game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the game looks pretty damn similar to Tekken 3. Even the main menus and the energy bars, etc., it looks pretty close to the PS1 game. So much so that I actually told myself for years that Tekken 3's graphics kinda hold up to this day. I was actually very mistaken. While Tekken 3 doesn't necessarily look bad, its graphics don't hold up in 2025. Tekken Tags do, however. It looked so similar to Tekken 3 that I actually confused how the game's graphics looked over time. But Tekken Tag was clearly an improvement over the other one. I don't even know why I mixed the two games, or not mixed their graphical looks at the time, but I accepted that Tekken 3 looked far better than it actually did because I just lumped it in with Tekken Tags. Wild on my part. Now, I am old enough to remember that Tekken Tag's graphics actually got criticized in gaming magazines at the time, and rightfully so. I kinda get it for just being a graphical reskin of Tekken 3. And yes, I don't know if Tekken Tag Tournament's graphics were that groundbreaking in comparison to the likes of like DOA 2 at the time, but it's not like that the game didn't still look amazing. There are games that were released 10 years after Tekken Tag 1 that still don't look as pretty as that game looked. Now, it does have that dizzy world spinning issues from the PS1 games, but it doesn't seem as bad here because they actually model 3D assets in the environments now. And since I touched on that, by the way, I am an artist after all, and these are the things that I focus on when looking at certain video games. An amazing touch of the game is that they didn't leave the environments as is from Tekken 3, and they actually changed aspects of how each stage looked. The dojo in Jin's Tekken 3 stages actually opened up so you can get a feel for the full landscape. Yoshimitsu's forest actually has actual trees in the forest this time, instead of just being a static background, but they had the added difference of it being covered with midday snow. A better example of what I'm talking about, and possibly a stroke of genius, they remembered that Heihachi and Ogre stages in Tekken 3 were connected rooms in the same building essentially. However, they updated Ogre's room to have a bunch of flames and torches hanging on the walls. But for Heihachi's, a portion of his stage was destroyed after the aftermath of Jin's Tekken 3 ending. So in Tekken Tag 1, you're actually fighting in the rubble left behind in the stage below in the environment. There's incredible small details like that I'm sure a lot of people either A, don't care, or B, didn't take notice of. Every stage has been touched up and improved for the better. Speaking of which, the character models of Tekken Tag look outstanding. They cleaned up each Tekken 2 character with both Player 1 and Player 2 attires added to the game. Kazuya specifically looks amazing with the updated graphics, but they also improved the Tekken 3 models as well and added new color palettes to each costume. If you need an example of how much better that the actual character models have improved, look no further than Chaoyu. Each mode that you loved from Tekken's past is here, essentially. This was a staple of most Tekken games in the early years. Time attack, survival. They even had a one-on-one mode if you didn't want to deal with the tag mechanics. As a Mortal Kombat player, I'm sure there are a bunch of MK1 fans that are pointing this out as Exhibit A for a no cameo mode. But I have to bring this up just because it's a part of the game. Tekken Tag added a random mode to replace Tekken Ball and Tekken Force mode. Tekken Bowl, which admittedly is way more fun than it has any right to be. Me and my friends actually wasted more time than I think anybody should be on this mode when I was growing up. Would I have rather had Tekken Force mode? Maybe, but the mode was still a nice little break from the fighting as far as a different option or a better option than Tekken Ball mode was. Which, for the record, I still think is the dumbest thing ever, and I can't believe it's back in Tekken 8. But I also feel like Tekken Bowl, considering that it's a tag mode in Tekken Tag Tournament 1, felt way better in this game than it actually did in Tekken 7, which we were charged for, by the way. This game was amazing. The only real criticisms I have of the game are really nitpicky criticisms that have no bearing on the actual gameplay or the real feel of the game. But I'm gonna throw them out here anyways. The first one is I wish we got longer endings. I'm not even asking for full FMV endings, which I'm not gonna lie, that would have been awesome too. And I get why we got the shorter ones that we got in the game, cause I'm not really sure how much they were able to push the hardware at the time in 1999. But actual roster size shouldn't have been the issue. I would like to let people go back and look at Tekken 5's roster and then go back and look at Tekken Tag 1. It's pretty close, to be quite honest. That being said though, some of the endings are still highly entertaining for the duration that they last, Unknown being the only character in the game to have an actual FMV ending. The other complaint, and this is a ridiculous one and it's just me, is I wish there was a way to get the older soundtracks into the game. The music for Tekken Tag 1 is cool, but even if we would have been able to have Tekken 3's music in the game, it would have been okay. Especially considering that we have all the Tekken 3 stages. But again, I understand why we have an original soundtrack for Tekken Tag 1. The game essentially wouldn't have felt like a new game and it would have just felt like a Tekken 3 reskin more than it already does if you would have just stuck in the same music from the game. That's why in my mind it would have just been nice to be able to listen to it in theater mode or something like that, the same way you could listen to Tekken 2's music in theater mode and Tekken 3 if you had the disc. Again, this is just childish nitpicking. Personally and purely for the nostalgia, Tekken Tag 1 is my favorite Tekken game of all time. Do I think it's the best in the series? Absolutely not. But the game is extremely fun and it's ridiculously playable to this day. I'm actually amazed at how much replay value this game still has in 2025 at this point. I'm also shocked that in today's gaming world of nickel and diamond consumers that Namco has not tried to charge us for a re-release of this game outside of the Tekken Hybrid release on PS3 and Xbox 360. For this to be an introduction of Tekken into a new generation of consoles, the franchise was off to an amazing start here. But These are my thoughts, and admittedly they are very biased. What are your thoughts and memories of Tekken Tag 1? And how do you compare Tekken Tag 1 to Tekken Tag 2, if at all? But in any event, as usual, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and you all have a good one, and I'm out.